Welcome back, everyone, to the Writer's Parachute. We're guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. Today, we have with us a very special guest. We have David Valovcin. I am still messing that up. So could you please say the name for us again?
Velosin.
See, it's so simple, and I can't get it out. But anyway, he's a children's author. We're going to go back and talk to him about his book, A Desk to Lean On. But of course, we always have the housekeeping to get done out of the way. So, of course, we would love for you to hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit the bell so you get a reminder when we have new episodes out. And of course, don't forget to hit that like and share button. Also, we are on all podcast channels. You can follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and now on Threads at Writer Parachute. That's Writer Parachute without an S. Also, if you would like to get an update of new episodes every week in your email inbox, so please feel free to go and sign up to sendfox.com/the writer's parachute, and you can get our weekly updated episodes right to your email. So we'll have all the links for that in the show notes for you. So don't worry, you don't need to run and grab pen and paper. Of course, anytime we mention a link, we will include that in the show notes for you. So, of course, we start the show at the top with a topic of the week. Here on season 2, we've been talking about reviews. So we're going to start wrapping it up and talk about how to create a review habit. Now, this is a little bit different in asking you to write a review. This is about creating a review habit around reading books. If you read a book, you need to think about writing a review. So I want you to think about making notes either directly after you read the book, or if you're stopping in between, it's a longer book and you need to lay it down, make some notes each time you read so that you have those to go back to when you write a review. Also, make notes as to when you're going to set a deadline to write that review. Don't forget, if you can't remember where you bought the book or the book was given to you, then you can always go to Goodreads. But then there's another place out there that I completely forgot about and I haven't talked to you guys about. So we're going to talk a little bit about that one too. It's called BookBub. You can find most authors and their books on bookbub.com. That's BOOKBUB.com. And you can leave reviews there. There's no purchasing required. Also, if you sign up for their email list with BookBub, they will send you alerts anytime books are on sale. You can select the categories and genres that you would like. You can also follow your favorite authors there. So let's not forget about BookBub. And of course, Goodreads is out there. We hope that you will remember that how important reviews are to authors. They're how we get our name and our books out into the world. They are king. They are what get us forward. They find our readers, find our listeners. So if next time you read a book, remember to leave a review. Reviews don't have to be complicated. They can be 1 or 2 sentences. It could simply be, I like this book, or I didn't like this book, or I recommend this book for this group or this age, or something of that nature, or they can be much longer. And don't forget, most platforms will now accept video reviews. So if you're not a writer, but you have this handy dandy gadget that you carry around in your pocket, do a video review and post that instead. I'm sure that the author would appreciate it. And don't forget to share it out on your social media and tag the author. They would be so thankful to hear from you. This is one of the few ways that we as authors get feedback from our readers. So don't forget, review. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump on into the show. Of course, we have with us David. I'm going to try it one more time. But David Velosin. Did I get it right?
Yes, very good.
Yes, okay. He is a children's author and assistant VP for software engineering and a father. And he wrote this book behind me, A Desk to Lean On, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. David Velosin considers his faith and family to be the most important parts of his life. When he is not staring at his computer screen, working as a financial services technologist, David can be found playing with his daughter and taking family trips to the local bookstore. He also does not mind bending to the will of his daughter and adores her every second of the day. David lives in Connecticut with his loving wife and beautiful daughter. A Desk to Lean On is his first children's book, and you can find David online at davidvalovcin.com. And of course, we will have that in the show notes for you. Welcome to the Writer's Parachute, David. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you today?
I'm well, although, tongue twisting myself around.
No problem.
That's all right. It just shows that I'm not perfect and I'm normal like everybody else. So I don't mind a bit. So I read your book. I love the book. I love the idea behind it. And I wanted to know why you thought that fear of change was an important topic to speak to kids about.
Because I think it's very common, especially in children. Some of them may be used to a routine, how they get their mornings going, how they get their days going. But change, new school year, new school, meeting new friends, whatever the situation is, sometimes children struggle with that change. And I wanted to be able to help the children and the parents, if I can, by telling my own story, my daughter's story, on how to handle change, whether it be like, for example, going to a new school.
Right. Well, and I did love the book. So I think you just kind of answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So what was the actual inspiration behind A Desk to Lean On?
Well, it was definitely my daughter. She's an only child. And it's why I adore every second of the day. And, I've always wanted to write a children's book. And she's the perfect inspiration for it. She entertains me in multiple ways throughout the day, and gathering the ideas and how she handled it at a young age with the new school. I wanted to tell that story.
Well, also, what I found interesting was not only were you dealing with fear of change and basically fear of, something new, but you were also talking about, her kind of problem solving skills, which I thought was very interesting. And we don't see that a lot in children's books where the main character is actually exhibiting the skills to solve the problem rather than going to an adult. And I do appreciate that, because we need to teach children how to solve problems, or at least start on that journey to solving problems. Even if they're not successful, it's still a learning experience for them. So I want to know what you think you would like readers to get or gain from reading A Desk to Lean On.
I want them to really understand that, at least from my perspective as a parent, I wanted to give my daughter that freedom, like you had said, to solve the problem. Guide her initially if she wants the guidance. Allow her to make some decisions. It helps. Maybe it's the wrong decision. Maybe it'll be the right decision. But at least allows them the freedom to try. Instead of putting what I think is the best path forward and kind of forcing it on her, that probably won't go so well. And so allowing that level of freedom to explore and try to figure it out on her own is really good here. And I use the term in the book, and I use it in my home life as well, as grace is on the case. And so just giving her that level of freedom to do that.
Right. And I love that, because, a child's logic is not the equivalent of an adult logic. Logic oftentimes is based on experience and knowledge, and you have to, look at what the experience and knowledge of, a 7 or 8 or 9-year-old is compared to a full-grown adult who's lived, a very long life and experienced many things. So it is a difficult thing, and sometimes it's hard as a parent to step back and let them go through that process when we could so easily just solve it for them.
Right. And sometimes they don't want you to solve it, or, or at least, or you giving your opinion, it just may not be the one they want to hear at this point in time.
Right.
And so rather than dealing with the pushback and the tension, allowing some level of freedom for them to explore safely is an option that worked for me.
Right. And because, eventually they are going to, push forward with their own independence. And I think these small moments of allowing them independence helps them to handle it better when they do get into their upper teenage years, when they're really pushing forward for that independence. So I appreciate that. And it's, we need to remember as parents, we're not all knowing and seeing either. And it's really hard to look from everybody's perspective, especially when we're removed from being that age, and the emotions and the thoughts and the knowledge and stuff around it. So I really do appreciate that. So if you could go all the way back to the beginning, when you first thought of this book and it was just a little idea in your head, what do you wish you had known or that somebody had told you about writing and publishing a book?
The steps, the steps on what to do, what makes most sense for putting your thoughts to paper, and then going through the flow from there. I went through, I had the idea in my mind and I wanted to tell this story, but up front, day one, I have the computer screen in front of me. I'm like, all right, what do I do? How best do I lay it out? And I found just a formula, a few formulas. I played around with, do I want to set it up as an outline? Do I just want to write it? What, and do I want to, how do I want to break it out and tell the story and bring it from a start to a middle with the challenges and then bring it to a good ending? All of that was a learning curve for me, and be able to experiment, without any kind of time constraint, because this was me initiating it. This is something I wanted to do. I didn't put a timeline on it, because that's the other thing that worked for me too, is don't say, all right, in September, I'm going to finish this book and I'll be done. I didn't want to put any timelines on myself, and I just wanted to get through the process on my own time, in my own manner, and come up with a formula for the writing that works for me. Of course, there were other learning curves that came with that, just in general, the overall publishing process, self-publishing process, and what steps I had to do from there. But I wasn't worried about that from day one. I wanted to just get my thoughts onto paper in a manner that worked for me.
Right. And I understand that. And it's, this is a difficult thing for new authors and writers, because there really are no rules to writing. There are only guidelines and guide rails. And yes, you can jump over the side, but as I always say, if you're going to do that, you better have a good reason. So, and again, there are as many ways to write a book as there are roads leading to Rome. And so you have to figure out what way you want to do it. And I say, for myself as a writing coach, the best advice that I can give to anybody is tell a good story. The rest of it is honestly window dressing, and it can be moved and changed to however you want it. But, telling a good story is always the best place to start. And then we talk a little bit about, where does a book start? Well, a book starts, I believe, either 5 seconds before or 5 seconds after something changes in the main character's life, because that's what sets the story in motion. So, a lot of people want to set up that moment, and it's like, especially in children's books, they're very short, they're very succinct. You have to maybe filter that information in there. And I think you did an excellent job of just jumping right into the problem, which is where you need to set the story off, because you want to grab your reader right off the bat. So, I completely understand. So what I would say to any of our listeners out there who are struggling with a similar problem, find a writing coach, find writing groups to attend. Shut Up and Write has free ones online, in person, around the world, pretty much anytime, day and night. You can go to shutupright.com and they have the entire list there for you. And, these are some resources that people are unaware of, that might have helped you, where you could talk to other authors, maybe other children's authors, and gotten a little more direction. But I understand people want to keep that information close to their vest when they're working on a book. But I still think you could have maybe reached out to some of these authors or writers or coaches about the structural part of it, which seemed to be what you were struggling with here. All right. So what do you think or hope that readers will think about your book or will say about your book in 10 to 20 years from now?
That it's still relevant.
Okay.
It is a common theme, a common topic with regards to just a child being nervous for change or going into a new school, the child is nervous. But it's something that should stay relevant
Mhm.
and could help at any point in time. And I'm not obviously a professional psychologist. This is my
Mhm.
first book, but I at least wanted to take it just from a layman's perspective as a father. This is how I did it. This is what the freedom that I allowed my daughter to explore to solve the situation.
Mhm.
And as you'll find in the book, she does solve it. She
Mhm.
does solve it in her own time, in her own manner, in her own way. I think it worked out for the best. It worked out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the book. It was not one of those books where you read, the first page and you kind of know where it's going to end. This one kind of led you on a little bit of a merry chase, but it was a good chase, and I did enjoy that. And I think that this would be the perfect book for, parents to either purchase for their kids if they're going to have to move or they're going to have to go to a new school, or any of those situations where they're going to have to deal with a kind of life change that they may find unsettling. I think it's a really good book. There's very few of them out there, and I think this would be a good one for any parent that is anticipating or change or has recently had a change. I think this would help them deal with it and look at it maybe in a little more positive manner rather than fearful. So I do appreciate that. So we talked a little bit about what you wish you'd known, but I want to know what you actually experienced as far as obstacles or challenges when you were writing and publishing your book.
Right. So taking it from day one, I had the thought in mind. My daughter was the inspiration. So I had the material, if you will, to pull this together. My initial challenge was getting it to paper. And what I found was that for me, initially I started the outline. And to be honest, the outline process didn't work for me. What actually worked for me is, and of course I editing and re-editing when the words came to paper, but I knew when I wanted to stop at page 1, go to page 2, and
Mhm.
then go to page 3. And I had a goal in mind of, this is what I want to get the point across.
Mhm.
Obviously I knew it was going to be a children's book, so I wanted to keep it short and sweet and to the point.
Mhm.
um, and knowing how I wanted to progress the story. The only formula or quote unquote outline that I did up front was making sure I call out each of the challenge and then the
Mhm.
steps to my daughter's resolution. That I put in a little bit of an outline form just so that it helps me know, all right, I'm going to start here, go here, go here. But the actual, details of it, I didn't put together a detailed outline. I just
Mhm.
really just started writing it. Of
Mhm.
course, that may or may not been the best way to go about it, but it's something that worked for me. And I know people have different ways to put thoughts to paper. But it helped me get through it. I knew the words. I just kept typing away. Obviously, the learning curves for me from there were editing,
Mhm.
and making sure that I didn't ramble on. My obviously all the grammar, trying to make sure it was grammatically correct. All those little things, of course, required a lot of editing. But like I said, I wanted to really just get the thoughts on paper immediately, and then make my edits from there.
Right, which is good. You should always do at least, I would say at least 3 to 4 drafts. Your original
Mhm.
draft, which is just getting the story down on paper. And I do appreciate that you did have the story arc, which basically was the middle, the beginning, the middle, the end. And honestly, that's really all you need to have. There's outliners, there's people who aren't outliners. We call them crafters and creators. I'm a little bit of both. I'm like you, I like to kind of write down the high points so that I meet those. Um, but I don't totally outlined. So I think that I lean more towards a creator rather than a crafter. Crafter is somebody that feels the need to plan everything out, every step. And again, there's variations in that. Some people just outline with an outline. Some of them go into more detail, scene by scene, page by page, paragraph by paragraph. There's also some that they're not crafters in formulating their book, but they're crafters in writing their book, where each paragraph or each page has to be perfect before they move forward. And there's nothing wrong with those. It's whatever works for you. And I tell people it is important to have all of these things, to be grammatically correct, to have the right language for the age that you're writing for, to have the page count within what is considered the acceptable, the word count within the acceptable range. But all of those things, again, are details that can be dealt with, because it's so much easier to take things out than it is to add things. And as an editor myself, I will tell you, it's really hard to edit a blank page. So, even if it's garbage, go ahead and write it. It can always be made better. So I think the lesson here is just to write, no matter how much you're struggling, how much you don't know. As you go through the process, you're going to learn more. It's going to get better. And then when you get to that editing stage, your editor is there to help you. We're not the evil people think we are. We're not the language police or anything like that. I do as much work with my authors about language choice, about word phrasing, about rhythm and pacing, as I do about punctuation and grammar. So
Right. And it's funny. Just a funny point to add here is that I figured, I did my editing. It sounded great. I had my, family read it, it said, just to make sure the flow was there. And they said, this is great. The flow is there. Look, I start working with the illustrator. Now I'm editing again, because what I found was a surprise. And then it turned out to be a pleasant surprise, is that when I'm working with an illustrator, because the best that I can do is draw stick figures. That's all I can draw. And so, working with an illustrator, when we're talking about now, my words are becoming pictures. That was an incredible process for me to go through. I mean, just seeing the pictures come alive based on the words that I'm putting on paper. I mean, I can't explain how excited I was. I mean, there really are no words to that. But what it did show me was that I had a little more editing to do, because the flow of the pictures and modifying the pictures to make sure that they match the words, and vice versa, and working with that illustrator to make sure that the pictures flowed besides the words, and that was something that was not I knew I needed to work with an illustrator, but I didn't expect that my flow of the book may get tweaked a little bit based on how the pictures looked and what made sense for what should be a picture versus what should not be a picture, based on my book. So all I can say there is that was an interesting experience, a needed experience, especially as a first full-time author. And it was, something I highly encourage you. If you're looking to working with an illustrator to help with the flow of the book, definitely do so. It's a really extraordinary experience when a writer is working with an illustrator, and just seeing your words become pictures is just there are no words to explain it. It's just fantastic.
Right. And this is something that people do not understand. Children's books are completely different than other books out there, simply because of the illustrations, especially picture books, which is what yours falls into, where it's equal illustration to story. So the illustrations are telling the story as much as the words. It's a partnership. So what I tell my children's authors who are not illustrators, and I'm with you on the stick figures. In fact, my grandkids tell me not to even draw the stick figures, that they're scary. But is when you're writing the story and when you feel like you have the story down, is to start putting in notes about what the illustration should be. Because what you're going to figure out is you don't need to describe certain things in children's books. You don't need to say she's wearing a red dress, because it's going to show in the illustration. You
Right.
know, you're not going to need to say that, you know, she walked up to the house, because you're going to have the illustration of her standing at the door. So we're going to have that. So there's some of these directional things and some of these describing things that are not technically necessary in a children's book because they are covered in the illustration. However, at the same time, the story must be able to stand on its own without the illustrations, because we do have non-sight readers who
Mhm.
cannot see the illustrations. So they need to be able to understand the story without the illustrations. So those are just some of the factors that you have to think about. This is some of the things that you might need a development editor for, and also your editors and your beta readers will help you with that. But and a good illustrator will help you with that as well. But I think if you go into the story after you have the story down, you feel like it's well done by you, is to go back and start inserting those descriptions of your illustrations, and that'll kind of help you see flow problems that you ran into with your illustrator. But I understand, as a first time, I mean, I remember my first book, I was completely clueless too. It's just like, nah, you know, so it's like a lot of back and forth. It's like, yes,
Yes.
we think we're done. And it's like, oh no. And here's the thing. I want you guys to not rush your books. It's so much better to do it well. And if that means minor changes at the end, then it means minor changes at the end, because what happens is you don't generally employ a proofreader until the very end. They're not only looking at the text, but they're looking at the illustrations and how they all work together. And so if your proofreader comes back and they're like, yeah, this is not really clear, this is not working, then you need to fix that, because if they caught it, then most likely your reader is going to catch it. And the only other thing I'll say about that is always think, when you're going through your final copy, are there unanswered questions? Are you creating a situation where the reader is going to go, huh, I wonder what they meant here? Because if that happens, then they're not obviously getting what it is you're trying to say. So always try to do that as the final run through. These are excellent ideas. It's like, and I've not really talked about them. So thank you for that, David. So leading you right into this. So what advice would you give to new authors and writers about writing a children's book?
Be patient. Uh, I think, especially if you're a new writer, just be patient. If unless your goal is to be like a New York Times bestseller, just take your time, make sure that you're getting the story told the way you want to tell it. I think that's very important. It's obviously a topic, a message that's very important to you. Take that time to make sure that your topic, your story, your message is clear. And especially for a children's book, what I ended up doing is that I started reading other books as examples. This was my first book ever, and I wanted to make sure that I'm writing in a manner that parents can easily read the book to the child if the child can not yet read, but also if a child can read, using language that works for them.
Right.
I don't want to use complex words, lengthy words where a child may not like, what does this word even mean? I wanted to avoid that. And so I read other children's books for the age group that I was looking to get the message across to, just so that it helps me with the verbiage and the terminology. That I think is very beneficial, especially if you're a first-time writer, and you have a sense of the age group you want to convey your message to. Look at other books, read them, see how they're laid out, see the length of the words per page, and the length of the book itself, to help guide you there.
Right. And just for reference, for most people, a children's picture book is generally K through third grade, which puts you in about a 4 to 9 range, depending, that's going to be about the maximum range for it. And they're typically 1,000 words or less, with the sweet spot being somewhere between 650 and 700. So some people go over, and I hear this a lot with this language. And one of the things as an editor is I have to really be careful about the language being appropriate for the age group of the reader. And I'll have authors go, but I want to challenge the reader. And I'm like, I understand that. And I truly do, that you want to encourage the reader to learn more words. But in this day and age, we have a lower reading score than we've ever had. Some kids do well, but the majority of them are struggling. So I say that if you're going to give them a challenging word, make sure there's no other way to get that point across with simpler language, and to add a glossary or a reading list at the end of the book, so that if they're stuck, and sometimes with bigger words, especially if it's a difficult word, maybe think about including the pronunciation of it, like you would see in a dictionary, so that it's a little easier for the reader. I used to be a reading specialist, and sometimes some of the words in these children's books, it's like it's really difficult.
Mhm.
And what happens when a child gets stuck on a word, they don't remember what they just read, because they're so focused on trying to figure out that word, that whatever they just read, and then usually at least the next paragraph or so after, they don't remember it either, because they're still trying to remember that word. So you've taken away kind of the information around that word. So, of course, every situation is different, but I want you to at least consider those factors if you're thinking about using difficult words. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. So what keeps you motivated?
Um, being a father, I mean, my daughter keeps me entertained. She really does. Just the way she plays, her own storytelling. She loves to play, and her imagination runs wild. And she has a little game table in the family room where she's got her little characters, her little figures, her plush toys, etc. Just the kind of story she's putting together herself, and what her little toys are doing and how they're interacting with each other. I'm watching from a distance. Sometimes she wants me to play with her. Sometimes she just wants her time in her own imagination to play. And when she's in that mode, I still like to watch from a distance, and it's just really incredible to see. It really is. And, I think, it just, as a writer or as aspiring writer, it just helps give me some more ideas, and, makes it that much more easier, if you will, to come up with ideas that people can relate to, both adults and children.
Right. Well, I mean, famously, the Winnie the Pooh series was, created by, a child playing, and the parent wrote the story.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I find this true. It's like my books and book series were inspired by my grandkids, and specifically, the start of it was one of my granddaughters was, asking me about one of my cats. It's like she would go out at night and say, I'd be gone for hours, and then she'd come back in and sleep all day. And so my granddaughter was like, what do you think she does at night? And I'm like, I don't know. And then, a few days later, I came up with a story about, oh, well, she's a she's a secret superhero. So she's out at night saving her animal friends. And so, came up with a longer story, but then we had to go back. It's like, how did she become a super secret superhero? Well, she had to go to superhero school. So the superhero school series was, invented. It's so much fun to feel that inspiration from a child, and I think it almost brings you back to that childlike wonder that we lose as we get adults. And it really does re-energize me when I talk to children about books and stories and ideas. And I don't think my imagination has any limits, which I think is invaluable. And it's a muscle like anything else. The more you use it, the more it's going to work well. So.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is amazing. So you wrote this book, A Desk to Lean On, and here in season 2, we've been talking about reviews. So I'm going to put you on the spot as our guest and ask you to give us a review of your book, A Desk to Lean On.
Wow. Okay. Well, I loved the book. And what I think, if I were to give a review on it as an adult, I would put the review as, I liked how the author used symbols in the book. So the cover, the perfect example is the title and the cover image. It's a desk to lean on. And as somebody's reading the book, they'll see that this desk is really a symbol. It's a symbol. It's, the desk is in the book, but the lean on and what my daughter is doing is she's leaning on family and friends. And then she comes to find out that people can lean on her, and so as if I were to give myself a review, I would say, I liked how the whole desk, quote unquote, is just a symbol, and that it's nice to see family and friends supporting each other. And in today's world and all the challenges of today, it's very important to show that love and support, both from adult to child, child to adult, which involves both children and family members.
That's an amazing review. I'm going to give you 5 stars. The reason we are putting our guests here on the spot on season 2 about reviews is because we want to show you, we want to illustrate very clearly how easy it is to write a review. Now, writing a review about your own book is really hard because it's like your child. You don't want to say anything bad about it. How do you describe your style, sort of thing? But they do it, and they do it well. As you can see, it's not complicated. It's not difficult. A review is simply your opinion about what you liked or didn't like about a book. So the next time you read a book, next time you check out a book that we recommend here on the Writer's Parachute, don't forget to go leave a review. Again, you can leave a review wherever you purchase the book. You can also go to Goodreads and to BookBub and leave reviews. I guarantee you the author would be so thankful and appreciate it. Don't forget to tag them to the reviews. They will love you for doing that. So I want to know, what is it next for David?
Well, I've got thoughts for another book in my mind, still in the mind, but now it's time to put to paper again. Again, main character is my daughter, and it definitely has a theme that everybody can relate to. Everybody, both adult and children, and so I'm really excited about this. It's all positive, of course. It will be another children's book, but the message is very clear. And I think if I were to take any lessons learned from book 1 to book 2, I would say that, my book 1 was, I knew what I wanted to write at a high level, but book 2, I know exactly what I want to write, and I know what I want to put in the story. And I think readers will be very excited about it. And when I'm publishing this second book, I think my daughter's going to find it, hopefully, really outstanding, because I don't think she'll be anticipating what I'm planning here. And I think she will really, really love this book. So that's my goal, at least. At least if I can win over my daughter, that's what's most important here.
Well, obviously, yes. Friends and family are always the toughest critics, but I think you've found clarity in your writing, which is an amazing thing. So I'm going to push you here. Any little sneaks or hints you can give us about this second book? I mean, teeny little hints, maybe?
Let's just say that it deals with family events.
Okay.
Family events is the main theme of this book. And based on just that alone is where I feel that, anybody should be able to relate to it.
Absolutely. We all have family events, and boy, we all know that they can be strife with things to write about and talk about. So when do you have an anticipation of when this book will be available? Or
I think it's a bit too early to tell for that right now. I'm gathering the details in my mind. I have started putting it to paper, but like my first book, I'm anticipating with my second book, the longest part of the process would be the illustrations.
right.
But at least now I know the process. by going through and, going through, let's say, the interview process, because that's a point of that's, I think it's important to convey is, especially if you're working with an illustrator, going through the interview process. Finding the right illustrator that works for you, letting them send you samples of what they've done. I think that's very important, because if you just choose an illustrator just to choose an illustrator, their output may not be what you expect or what you want. And so now with the second book, I know what I want it to look like. I know what I want my daughter to look like and any of the characters to look like. So that's at least one advantage I have from the first book to the second book.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also too, it's you have to also, with illustrators, you have to look at their availability, their timeline. It's like,
That's right.
you may find the perfect illustrator, but they can't get to your book for a year.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
Or their pricing may be out of your budget. So, these are all the factors. So I generally have like a checklist that I tell people is, go and find, at least 10 to 15 illustrators that you like their work, reach out to them. The first question should be, what is your price range for a typical book? How many pages you anticipate? And when is your availability? Because that's going to pare it down, and then go back for samples after that, because there's no point in getting samples from somebody that they're either out of your price range or they're too far out to be available for you. So those are just kind of the things that I always say. It's just good practice to have that. But again, a lot of people don't know that. It's like, until you go through the process, it's really hard to imagine that you need to do those things first. So I appreciate that. So can we anticipate a release in 2024, or do you think it's going to be beyond that?
No, it should be in 2024.
Okay.
It should be in 2024. Like I said, the illustration is the longest, but the other point I just wanted to make besides illustration is book formatting.
Yeah.
So one of the lessons learned for me was, formatting the book, and being able to self-publish it through, for example, Amazon KDP, and finding the hard way that the formatting that I did for Amazon is different than the formatting needed for Barnes and Noble. And so having to reformat little tweaks here and there so that it makes it, for Barnes and Noble. So, those are kind of the lessons learned that hopefully I'll be able to get over more quickly for the second book than I did for the first.
Right. And most of the time, I mean, not every illustrator, but most illustrators will also do your covers and your interior layouts, especially for pictures books. But if you're ever questioning the formatting and information that is necessary for your book on a particular platform, KDP, Barnes & Noble Press, and Ingram Spark all have a tools and resources section with a downloadable PDF that gives you all of the specific guidelines that if you don't understand it, you certainly could pass it along to whoever is doing your layout and have them do that in the different formats. Yeah, that is something. And even your covers are all going to be different. It's like a hardback cover is different than softback cover versus an ebook cover, and they may be different between KDP and Ingram and Barnes and Noble. So you do need to have those guidelines. And again, for covers, I would suggest that you go to each of the platforms and get their template generator, which does help you with the cover sizing, because the worst thing you can have is a great book, but the cover doesn't fit exactly right, or the print on it isn't exactly in the right place. So excellent, always giving us way more information, so we appreciate that. So we know your books are available for sale. Where can listeners find your books? What retailers?
Right now they can find it on Amazon. I'm actually finalizing the formatting for Barnes and Noble, so it should be published later this year on Barnes and Noble. But right now you can find it on Amazon, and there's a link on my website where you can find it when you do a search on Amazon.
Okay, awesome. And we will have the link for you to David's website and to his Amazon author page so that you can purchase his book and, of course, stay up to date with him on when this next book comes out. Don't forget, you can always follow authors on Amazon as well and get updates to your email about when they have new books available. So I know that you're on social media. Where can they connect with you on social media?
So I have a Facebook profile. I'm on Instagram, and you can send me messages from my website too. There's a email chat feature, if you will, on my website where you can send me questions or comments.
Okay, so just Facebook and Instagram, no X or Threads or TikTok?
I've got a LinkedIn profile too.
Okay. All right. Well, we will again have those direct links for you so you can go follow David and stay up to date on all that he is doing. Any upcoming events, newsletters, blogs, signups, or giveaways that you would like to share with our audience?
I will do a Goodreads giveaway. I've done one some time ago. I think I will do another one. Like you mentioned, I've got a Goodreads profile. I'll do a Goodreads giveaway. I do have BookBub as well, a profile out there, and they all link to the book. But probably a Goodreads giveaway will be coming. And then, with the school session, I've got a couple schools coming up for a reading, a guest reader. And so I'm excited to do that as well.
Okay, so if we have any teachers, parents, or administrators, educators who would like to reach out to you for author visits or readings, can they reach you through your website for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
All right. Well, as I said, we'll include all of that information for you in the links. And of course, David's going to send me the information about this Goodreads giveaway, and we will include that for you so you can go sign up for his giveaway. So was there anything else that you wanted to share before we jump over and do our tip of the week?
I just hope people enjoy the book. I found it a very rewarding process for myself, just as a father and a first-time writer. And I really hope that people enjoy the book. I hope it helps them as a parent, and it helps your children dealing with change.
I think you did an excellent job, and I appreciate you being here on the Writer's Parachute. We'd love to have you come back when the second book is available.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We're going to go ahead and jump over to our tip of the week. And so we talked to David about a whole bunch of things, and it's like he was a wealth of information, and I appreciate that. One of the things we talked about was how to deal with the two sides of the coin, storytelling and formatting. So storytelling is the story itself. It's about telling the story. How do you tell the story? Does it start at the beginning? Does it start at the end? Where does it start? As I mentioned earlier, I think it starts where something changes, and then it goes from there. And then, of course, any backstory, you can kind of filter that in. It's a little more difficult in a children's book, so you got to be a little more succinct. But that is the critical part of what the readers see. They see the story. They see the story through the words, and when you're dealing with picture books, through the illustrations. Formatting is the way you present that information. It's like, where do you break the pages? Where do you break the chapters? Where do you set the illustrations? How many illustrations? This is all about formatting. And again, I think this is more window dressing. Yes, it is something that you have to consider once you have your story down as to how you're going to break it out, how you're going to present it. But I think it is a secondary thing because, again, the story can be adjusted to the formatting, but you cannot adjust, you can't format it and then try to retell the story. So you do need to tell the story first. And one of the things that we did talk about a little bit is there is kind of a story arc for almost all books. I would say, especially for children's books and fiction books, is a modified hero's journey. A hero's journey basically says that something changed and the main character needs to either learn something, find something, or learn a new skill. In this particular case, we're talking about David's book. She had to learn something to be able to deal with the challenge that presented itself. And she goes through a series of obstacles and challenges and learns more information so that at the end she can resolve the problem and pull it to a good conclusion, which is called bringing home the elixir. That means a satisfying ending, the happily ever after, whatever you want to call it. That is what a modified hero's journey is. It can be done in as many acts as you want to. I would say you typically need at least 3. You need the opening, you need the middle, you need the ending. That's pretty common for children's books. If you're writing larger books, you can expand that to 5 to 7 to whatever you want. But all books and almost exclusively fiction books will follow some kind of a modified hero's journey. Now, it doesn't have to be a single character, it could be multiple characters, it could be multiple problems, but there's always an inciting event that starts your story. And then we send the characters or the person in the book on a journey to solve the problem or to fix whatever is wrong. So I hope that is helpful for you. Of course, there's always so much more we could say about storytelling, about formatting, about the hero's journey, and more about writing reviews, about receiving reviews and best practices. But of course, we have a limited amount of time here on the Writer's Parachute. If you would like any more information or more discussion around the particular subject that we have brought up here on the Writer's Parachute, please feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us through the website at thewritersparachute.com, or you can leave us a comment on wherever you're listening or watching us, either on YouTube or one of the podcast platforms, or you can email to us direct at info@thewritersparachute.com, and we would happily get back to you. As always, I'm so thankful to be the host here on the Writer's Parachute, guiding author and writer dreams to a perfect landing. We hope that you find this as a safe place for your dreams to land well too. Until next time, I want to thank David for being our guest today, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.